They told Pam Bondi to leave, expecting her to flip out, but her reaction stunned the whole diner into silence. Pam Bondi pulled her SUV into the lot of Ellie's diner, a no-frills spot off State Road 70 in Bradenton, Florida. It was late, after a day of courtroom prep, calls, and dodging reporters. Her stomach growled louder than her patience. A mechanic she'd met earlier swore by the place, said their fried mullet was the best this side of the Gulf. She killed the engine, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door, the humid night air sticking to her skin. The bell clanged as she walked in. Ellie's was tight, 8 booths, a counter with wobbly stools, a fan rattling in the corner. The smell of fried fish and coffee hit her fast. Locals filled the seats, some nursing beers, others digging into plates of fries and coleslaw. Pam stepped up to the counter where a waitress, mid-40s, ponytail, wiping a mug, glanced her way. The woman's face went stiff mid-nod, eyes narrowing as she clocked who Pam was. Pam caught it, that split-second freeze, and braced herself. A guy at the counter turned, beer bottle pausing halfway to his mouth. A woman in a booth muttered something, her fork tapping her plate harder than it needed to. Pam knew that look. She'd seen it in depositions at rallies. But here, over a meal, the waitress set the mug down slow, like she was buying time. "Hey," she said, voice tight. "You staying or taking it to go?" Pam forced a tired smile. "Staying if you've got a spot." The waitress didn't move, just stared for a beat too long, then jerked her head toward the kitchen. "Give me a sec, gotta check." She bolted through a swinging door, leaving Pam standing there, the room's attention creeping over her like a slow tide. A guy coughed. Another shifted in his seat, whispering to his buddy. The air felt off, thick, wrong. Pam crossed her arms, waiting. Voices buzzed behind the kitchen door, low, fast, heated. She shifted her weight, glancing at the clock above the counter. 8:47 p.m. She wasn't looking for a fight, just a plate and some peace. The waitress marched back out, chin up, no doubt left in her now. "Sorry, ma'am," she said, loud enough to bounce off the walls. "Can't serve you tonight." The words dropped like a brick. The diner went quiet, not silent, but damn near. Grease snapped on the grill. A glass clinked. Every pair of eyes locked on Pam, waiting for her to blow. She didn't. "What's the problem?" she asked, calm, like she was asking about the weather. The waitress stood her ground. "We'd rather you didn't eat here. No dodge, no excuse, just blunt." The room tightened. Folks leaning in, breaths held. Pam scanned past her, the cook's head poked through the kitchen window, staring, spatula still in hand. She blew out a breath, hands on her hips. "Can I see the manager?" That shook them. The waitress blinked, hesitated, then darted a look toward a side door. A rough laugh barked from a booth. The guy at the counter, leathery skin, trucker hat, grunted and stabbed his fries. Pam didn't budge, just waited, steady. The waitress slipped away again. The room held its breath. A straw slurped. A chair creaked. Then the side door swung wide, and a man stomped out. 50s, barrel-chested, apron streaked with grease, name tag pinned on, Troy. He didn't waste time, just planted his feet and stared her down. "You got something to say?" "Yeah," Pam said, matching his gaze. "Why am I out?" Troy snorted, crossing his arms. "It's not you," Pam cut in sharp. "Looks like me." His jaw flexed. He rubbed his neck, then let it out. "Folks here know you. Don't like what you've said, what you've stood for. I've got a business, not a battleground." Pam nodded, slow, chewing it over. "My sitting down starts a war?" Troy didn't answer, just flicked his eyes to the counter where the trucker guy shoveled food slower now. A younger dude in a booth, 20 seconds, buzz cut, sleeveless, smirked like he was ready for popcorn. Pam got it. It wasn't one speech or case. It was all of her. The TV clips, the headlines, the heat. She could walk away, call it quits. She could push, make it loud, let it spiral online. Instead, she yanked a chair from a table, sat down hard, and said, "Then let's figure it out." The diner locked up. No yelling, no grandstand, just Pam, elbows on the table, cool as steel. Troy's mouth twitched. "Figure it out?" he said, like she'd lost it. She shrugged. "You don't want me here. Tell me why." A cackle shot from the booth guy. "She's got some nerve." Pam didn't flinch. Troy grabbed a chair, dragged it over, leaned on it with both hands, grease smudged on his knuckles. "I don't need trouble," he said. "No headlines, no mess. Just keeping my people happy." Pam nodded again. "What do they say about me?" Troy glanced around like the answer was floating in the humid air. The waitress lingered by the coffee pot. The truckers four-covered. "They don't trust suits," Troy said. "Think you talk big. Act different." "Sets em off." Pam leaned back, arms crossed. "You don't know me one-on-one, though, do you?" Troy paused. "Not up close, no, so." Pam pressed. "If I was just some random walking in, no name, would you still toss me?" Silence hit. Heavy, sticky silence. The booth guy jumped in. "It's not random. It's you." Pam turned slow. "Who am I to you?" He grinned, leaning forward. "Hotshot lawyer who plays like she's regular, but rolls with the sharks." Pam took it, nodding. "What did I mess up?" He froze, not the comeback he wanted. "You want me gone," she said. "I hear it. But you've got the stage. Lay it out." The diner went dead. No grease popping, no mugs clinking, just stares boring into her, some hot, some unsure. Troy sighed, scratching his jaw. "Didn't sign up for this tonight." Pam's lip quirked. "Neither did I." Then the trucker growled, "Damn shame a lady can't grab a bite." It landed, small, rough, real. A few heads bobbed. Troy let out a gravelly chuckle, shaking his head. Pam locked eyes with him. "What's the play?" Troy glanced at the kitchen, then back. "You stay. We talk. If I don't think you're just spinning yarns, maybe you get fed." Pam's grin flashed quick. "Good enough." The vibe shifted. Not smooth, but less sharp. Troy dropped into the chair, hands flat on the table. "I don't know if you're what they peg you as," he said. "People here, they've been fed lines, jobs, fixes, hope. Never sticks." Pam tapped a finger on the wood. "I see why they're ticked." The booth guy scoffed. "That's it." Pam turned. "What else you fishing for?" He sat up. "Fight. Say you're right." She didn't blink. "You wrote me off before I parked. Wanted me mad to feel good about it. But I've been there, that pissed off feeling when nothing changes. I still carry it." Troy's hand stilled. He wasn't buying it full on, but he wasn't brushing her off. The trucker piped up, voice low over his beer. 35 years on rigs. Watched M shut down. Folks scatter. Suits came, talked pretty, left us high and dry. "You won?" Pam met his stare. "You tell me." He looked hard, then shrugged. "You're the first one who didn't run." That hit. The waitress fidgeted. The booth guy clammed up. Troy stood. "Cindy," he called. "Get her a menu." A ripple ran through. Not cheers, just a shift. Cindy slapped a menu down. Pam grabbed it. "Thanks." Troy shook his head, half grinning. Might not warm up to you. Pam flipped it open. Don't need you to. The trucker muttered. Damn shame. Quieter now. Cindy slid a plate over. Fried mullet. Fries. Tartar sauce on the side. Pam took a bite, deadpan. Bit tough. A beat. Troy barked a laugh, loud and real. The diner loosened. Forks scraped. Chatter trickled back. Not fixed. Not friendly, but alive. Pam ate, eyes flicking around, and for one night in Bradenton, it wasn't a brawl. It was something else. She chewed slow, letting the moment settle. The mullet was decent, crisp outside, flaky inside, though the fries could have used more salt. Troy hovered near the counter now, arms crossed, watching her like she was a puzzle he hadn't cracked. Cindy poured coffee for a guy to stools down, sneaking glances at Pam. The booth guy slumped back, picking at his coleslaw, his smirk long gone. The trucker finished his beer, pushed the bottle aside, and waved for another without a word. Pam set the sandwich down, wiped her hands on a napkin. You ever get this before? She asked Troy, voice low but carrying. He frowned, leaning against the counter. What? Someone not wanting you. She nodded. Not like this. Not over fries, he snorted, rubbing his chin. Most folks would have stormed out. Or called someone. Lawyer? News? Whatever. Pam shrugged, taking a sip of water Cindy had dropped off. Crossed my mind. Troy laughed again, shorter this time. Why didn't you? She leaned forward, elbows on the table. What's the point? You'd still think what you think. I'd still be hungry. That got a grunt from the trucker, who tipped his fresh beer her way like a salute. Troy studied her, then shook his head. You're a piece of work, Pam smirked. Heard that before. Cindy walked by, refilling the trucker's coffee without asking, her eyes darting to Pam again. The booth guy muttered something under his breath, but didn't look up. Pam picked up the sandwich again, took another bite. The diner was waking up. Plates clattered as Cindy cleared a table. The grill hissed as the cook flipped something new. A woman 2 booths over laughed at her husband's story, oblivious to the standoff that had just fizzled out. Pam chewed, swallowed, then looked at Troy. So, what's the word? I pass your test? He crossed his arms tighter. Didn't say that. But you're eating, ain't you? She nodded, popping a fry in her mouth. Fair. The trucker turned on his stool, facing her now. You really get it. The crap we've been through. Pam met his eyes steady. Grew up watching my dad grind it out. Construction. Long hours. No breaks. Saw friends' families lose everything when the jobs dried up. Yeah, I get it. He grunted, sipped his beer. Don't sound like a lawyer. Pam's lip twitched. Good. Troy shifted, uncrossing his arms. Folks here don't forget, he said, quieter now. Every promise that fell apart, every time someone said they'd fix it and didn't, Pam nodded. I don't expect them to, the booth guy piped up, voice lower than before. So why stay? You're not changing us, Pam turned. Didn't come to. Came for dinner, he blinked, then looked down at his plate. Poking at it with his fork, Cindy swung by, dropped a coffee in front of Pam without asking. It's strong, she said, almost a challenge. Pam took a sip, raised an eyebrow. Tastes like it. A couple of chuckles floated up, small, but there. The trucker smirked, shaking his head. Troy walked back to the kitchen, calling over his shoulder. Don't burn the place down, Cindy. She rolled her eyes, but a grin tugged at her mouth. Pam finished the mullet, pushed the plate aside. The diner hummed now. People eating, talking, living. Not everyone was sold on her. The booth guy still shot her a side eye. The woman in the booth up front kept her head down. But the edge was gone, replaced by something quieter, less certain. Pam leaned back, sipping the coffee, letting it burn her tongue a little. Troy came back, stood by her table. "You're not what I figured," he said, almost to himself. She shrugged. "Most people aren't." He nodded, slow, then walked off to check the grill. The trucker paid his tab, slid off his stool, and tipped his hat her way as he left. Cindy cleared his spot, tossing Pam a quick look. Not warm, but not cold either. Pam finished the coffee, left a 20 on the table, and stood. The bell clanged again as she headed out, the night air hitting her like a damp towel. She didn't look back, but she knew they were still watching. If you made it this far, here's my ask. Ever had to pick between bailing or sticking it out to hear someone's side? Drop it below. I'm all ears.